Hello. Angry of Mayfair here. I've come along to warn you about Ronco's new album thing. It's called Rock House, and it's full of that awful, loud, rock and roll type music. Disgusting! Such types as Shaking Stevens, Alvin Stardust, Stray Cats, Matchbox and Darts. It's the sort of thing you get rammed down your ear holes at those dreadful, loud, swinging parties. Rock House! Ugh!
On a bus in Birmingham, Orestes Velato discusses the relative merits of salsa with Carlos Santana.
Most rhythms come from Africa, to my understanding. The mix of African and Cuban is by far the most predominant, music in America. Afro-Cuban and Afro-Brazilian. They're the most appealing, let's say, to the ears of the Americans. But now we have a new music that it's not new, but it's new to us, most Americans. See, salsa, there's a lot of Spanish in it too, and the Spanish got conquered by the Moors, and that's still African, So, but what's funny is that when you go to Africa, they don't play like that. Salsa music salsa means sauce, with like spices. This is why Christopher Columbus, I believe, went to America, discovered America. He was looking for spices in their food. And that's exactly what Latin music is spices. It makes everything very hot, like hot peppers or something. It's really infectious, is what it is, because they just stay in one thing, like it go doom 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 doom, and they just stay there until they put you on a trance.
Oh, Jamie.
I told you before, salsa is like just a name, but it's actually salsa. It's Latin music, and danceable Latin music is what they call salsa. So it's been around for a long time.
You know those little stereo cassette players with tiny headphones? They're old news. Why? In a word, Toshiba's walkie has a stereo radio too. It clips in like a cassette. Just tune in. Toshiba or not Toshiba, that is the... Or take the radio out and play ordinary cassettes. The walkie. Simple. But there's only one technical word you need to know.
I find a cassette more useful because I've got one of those cassette recorders I can take around with me.
Do you ever tape albums onto blank cassettes?
Not often. Sometimes I do, but not very often.
Did you know that was actually illegal?
No.
Home taping is illegal. If you read the small print on a record, it says, unauthorised public performance, broadcasting and copying of this record prohibited, or words to that effect. But one reason why people do home tape is because records cost about £5.
There have indeed been a number of people, consumers in the past, who have complained that they are unemployed or whatever, and within the recession they simply haven't got the money to go and buy albums anymore. Well, that's fair enough, but I can only stress again that this is no justification for stealing. It's like me saying that I'd like to buy a new car, but I can't afford it, so I'm going to go and steal one. It's exactly the same thing.
Richard Robson of the BPI, an organisation which represents 95% of the music industry. He has strong opinions on the matter, which may not entirely be linked to the moral welfare of the nation.
We've been monitoring the growth of home taping in this country for some years now, with a series of market research studies that have been undertaken by outside market research organisations. The latest of these studies was published at the very beginning of 1980 and indicated that losses had grown to something like £220 million per year.
It has now become a priority for the BPI to get that money back.
Do you ever buy blank cassettes and then record other albums onto them?
Yes, I do that. I do that all the time, especially off the radio.
Of course, the suggestions that the government are making for extra revenue primarily evolve around extra revenue coming from the broadcasting organisations. We consider this as entirely impractical, and we would have thought the broadcasting organisations would as well. It seems to us that the only fair and equitable way to compensate rights owners for their losses is by way of a levy on blank cassettes and cassette recording equipment.
That levy is intended to raise the revenue. Artists as diverse as Andy Summers, Jonah Louie and Kiki D have lent their support to a BPI campaign of adverts, badges and T-shirts, proclaiming that home taping is killing music. All this in support of a levy to raise money.
The money raised would be distributed to copyright owners who are actually losing. That means the record companies, record producers, songwriters, music publishers and artists.
Given these hard times, what other solutions are there? Island Records have a project called 1+1, which they believe is helping their artists.
The only real gauge of the success of 1+1 has been to measure the tape sales of titles which were out last year on a conventional kind of pre-recorded cassette. For instance, Cat Stevens' back catalogue, we've sold something like 600 or 700% more this year than last year.
That's Rob Partridge, press officer at Island. Could 1+1 solve the £220 million deficit? 1+1 is a cassette that used to have a pre-recorded album backed over with a blank side. It now has the LP repeated on both sides. Either way, one whole side of the cassette is up for grabs. Island have been accused of helping home taping.
We are actually making money for our artists because we've increased sales, which more than compensates for the potential loss of revenue on the B-side. We don't advocate what anyone should do on the B-side, but nevertheless, obviously there are people who use the B-side for recording other people's material. Nevertheless, if the entire music business converted their cassette series to 1+1 format, then the potential sales on our pre-recorded cassettes would far outweigh their sales potentially lost.
Are Island in favour of home taping? No, they're not.
We too, of course, as record producers, stand to lose as much as anyone else. Therefore, we advocate a blank tape levy. We're completely in agreement with the BPI's policy on that.
So, will the BPI be putting a levy on Island's 1+1 system? Time will tell. But leaving aside questions of how the money raised would be distributed and whether the already successful artist would take more than the less successful, the £220 million question is, what would the levy represent?
The levy would be decided upon by an outside tribunal. What we have pointed out to the Department of Trade, however, is that given the size of our losses at the moment and given the size of the blank cassette market in this country as it is at the moment, in order for us to have full compensation, we are talking about something like £1 on a C60, £2 on a C90 and £3 on a C120.
Which at current prices could put a blank C60 at £2.20, a blank C90 at £3.50 and a blank C120 at £4.80.
However, I must stress that these figures are purely to indicate the size of levy in order for us to have full recompense. I don't think any levy that would be introduced would be anything like as high as this.
Phew.
Brushing your teeth makes your mouth feel clean. A pack of Dentine chewing gum keeps it feeling clean right through the day. So don't lose that freshness. The Fresh Breath Gum.
Reviewing 3 records this week are Hugh Cornwall and Jet Black from the Stranglers, with Mark Springer and Gareth Sago of Rip Rig and Panic. First up, Dare by Human League on Virgin Records.
Oh, is this on now?
We're on, yeah, that was the Human League.
My gosh. Well, I'm glad to see Martin Rushton's filling his studio up.
Can use it to turn your brain into a marshmallow.
Don't think anyone liked that, did they?
Did anybody like it at all? Hugh, what did you think of it?
Well, I mean, you know, it's. I think Martin's done a good job there with what
I
he
quite
had.
liked it. The contest, I think, I thought it would sound good in an abattoir or something like that.
Music for an abattoir?
Yeah, music for an abattoir.
You going to much abattoirs with music?
Should we?
Now, what were we saying when that was on? Apart from yawning,
before I was yawning, we were actually trying to find out whether anybody thought
it was MOR or not.
Apparently, their manager thinks that he's going to push him in a very MOR direction.
They're there. We should just push him over the edge. They've had their little bit.
Well, I saw that film on top of the flops of them, and I couldn't see any difference between that and an ABBA film. And they're 20 years older.
But are the girls as good looking?
Well, this is debatable, isn't it?
Put your hand in a parting wave, pass around. Make a shroud pulling come through a backwash brain.
As a producer, do you think that he actually sat there and tried to arrange or to direct the song as it went down?
Well, I didn't think there was anything to produce there, actually.
Very sparse sound, isn't it?
Such a vacuous track. I mean, there's so much space in it that I couldn't see what there was to produce.
It's all DI'd keyboards.
He probably spent his time while I was recording that programming the drum computer.
Second, Neil Young's Reactor on reprise.
Gareth, I know we found something that you like.
Yeah. I saw an eyebrow actually go up.
I saw some sort of recognition, yeah. A couple of tracks there from Neil Young.
It's the sort of music that does nothing for me simply because I've heard it all a million times before.
Yeah.
So it's nothing new, nothing exciting. In fact, we can probably throw it out.
You mean it's
we can
not
probably throw it out of the window.
In fact,
you hit the Neil on the head there.
And finally, Clara Quasi by Yellow on Do It.
Could be a bit heavy, couldn't it?
But they're Swiss, but they're Swiss.
I think it's an interesting album.
That's from Germany.
I heard it through once earlier on, and I thought there was some really interesting things on it. They use I mean, they're playing electronic music and retaining your interest, whereas some of this electronic stuff has got so many holes in it. It's so repetitive and boring.
And they keep it simple because they can't put anything out. They can't think of anything else to put on it.
I think it's terrible. I think it's absolutely terrible.
So this is Ralph Records. It's really something to do with
it's actually on Do It Records, which is.
There's a lot of different feels on this album. It goes from out and out disco to some stuff that could even be misinterpreted as being Gustav Holst. You know, it's very orchestral and.
I've listened to the whole thing as well, and I like it a lot. I think it's very moody. But I mean, you don't really want to know what happens, do you?
No, shut up.
Jet Black likes it anyway.